Welcome to Triangle BNI. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. Oak City Tech is going to help you get found out there, folks, because that is a crazy digital world right now. They can help you with web design, SEO, social media, anything you need. So please go to Oak City Tech. Tell them what you're looking for. I know they'll be able to help you. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Manning. Welcome back to Triangle BNI. Each week, we bring you a small business success story from Triangle BNI. If you're not familiar with BNI, it is Business Networking International, the world's largest networking organization. Our little slice of heaven here in the Triangle is Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. Each week, about 30 chapters and almost 600 members get together, and we are there to help each other grow their businesses. And our small business success story today is Kevin Seifert, a local photographer in one of the Big Bad Daddy chapters in Triangle BNI. Kevin, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thank you very much for having me this morning.
Glad to have you. Kevin is in RD27, Bull City Business Leaders, and I always refer to them as the New York Yankees and Manchester United of Triangle BNI because they bring in so much more money than the other chapters. Kevin, I think you guys are sitting at what, 47, 48 members right now?
I believe that's about right.
Yeah, it's amazing, folks. If you've never been to a BNI meeting, first of all, Kevin's chapter meets Thursday mornings at 11:15. Right now it's by Zoom. Once we get back to, whenever we get back to, it'll be at Cafe Parazot in Durham. But to get 48 people, elevator pitches in, visitors, which you guys have a ton of, 2 5-minute speakers, everything else we need to do in an hour and a half is very impressive to do. How do you guys do that?
I would say, our team's been together. We have a core of members that have been there. I'm going into my 10th year. And we have a couple members that are 11, 12. I think Sheldon Galloway with Garden Environments has probably been there 14 years. So we do have a really cool, really good cohesive group, and it is about helping each other. So, it's volunteer, and we have people that continuously step up, and we have a great mentoring program as well. So I think that really helps. And we also have the power team structure, which Steve Hand talks about. And when you establish some good power teams, you can do trainings in there to really get people to say, hey, if I really invest in this, we're gonna run this ship really tight, and it's going to be efficient, and people really respect that, and they commit. So I think that's how we do it. Just the people in our chapter are great.
And I'm a consulting director. You used to be a consulting director, so you know how the training works. And in anything, it's about showing up. And I use Sheldon in my training as an example, as a story I learned from your group. One day, a landscaper walked in just to visit, and Sheldon does some seriously good hard landscaping through his company. The work they do is Fifth Avenue magazine level stuff. And this guy, evidently, last I heard, had passed Sheldon about $1 million worth of business. And the moral of the story is Sheldon was where he was supposed to be that Thursday at 11:15, and in walks a guy. And you truly, and you know this as a longtime business owner, you truly don't know who's walking in the door next, do you?
Exactly. And then that story about the numbers, but I do know that the person invited them to meet Sheldon, and the person showed up that particular day and not, another random day. And if Sheldon had missed that meeting, it would have made him look bad. It would have made the person inviting the visitor look bad too, and it would have been, a lot of money, that would be in Sheldon's pocket, helping his clients. So yeah, it's a great story of Sheldon has probably missed, since I've been there for 10 years. I think he's missed maybe 3 meetings. I mean, it's pretty incredible.
Well, and you see the value of it is we look at that as part of our marketing plan. Why would you not go somewhere to a place that's given you probably $1 million, $2 million over the last 10 years, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously it's earned as well. So,
Mm.
that's one of the things is, you visit your visibility, um, and your credibility equal profitability, right? B plus
Yep.
C equals P. And that Sheldon's somebody that really, has has taken that to heart, and he's visible, and credible, and people give him testimonials during that. So I'm sure during that meeting, which is at least 10 years ago, because I wasn't in the meeting, um, I'm sure that he got up and the person gave him a testimonial as well, the person that invited the visitor. And that really goes a long way too. So you're establishing these relationships, and they don't happen overnight. And that's one thing that's really important about BNI. So it takes a long time. So
It does. Kevin owns RTP.Studio. You can see the logo if you're watching on the internet here with us. You've been doing this a long time. Your company, it's 17 years this month. You've been a photographer, I believe, in this area, correct?
my story starts with yeah. There's my business name is actually, so my incorporated business is called Photo Endeavors, and I launched that in 2004. But I moved to the area in 1998. I was a staff photographer for the Durham Herald Sun for just over 9 years, and I had launched a kind of, in the journalism world, you need a pseudonym, so you can kind of work some of these freelance jobs, and your name might show up in the competition's paper. So we all kind of branded our own photo studios, that I never ran into a problem with it in the sense of working for the competition directly. So but it established a name. So in 2004 I established that because I was also building websites, um, which don't really want, I pull people in on the team to do that. But I incorporated in 2008 in July, actually it would be September. So September uh, 2008 would have been my official start of my business. So my independent studio.
So a couple questions on the new name, and you rebranded, I think you said a couple of years ago, to RTP.Studio. So what brought on that name, and tell us a little bit about the logo there.
Yeah, so I love BNI, and BNI is, it's about relationships and people. One of my goals is to create a real viable, sustainable business that's sellable. And so I've established my name over the years, um, and I've always wanted to kind of transition into something a little bigger. So I chose RTP.Studio because that's where I'm located. It's easy to remember. I mean, I can't tell you how many times somebody would, ask me my email address, and it was Kevin at KevinSeifertPhotography.com. I'd have to spell the name out. I'd have to, so it's just, and it was impossible for me to type it in. I was like, I'm just getting sick of it. So it's now just Kevin at RTP.Studio. People remember it. I don't even need a business card anymore. Um, so that evolved from just being in the Frontier building, which is part of, so Research Triangle Park is actually an entity of the Research Triangle Foundation. And it's about a 2 square mile um, property, land property with all these great tech businesses. So I'm very interested in STEM. But that's where most of my business is actually coming from. So I decided in 2017, I pulled the trigger on moving into a studio space in the building, in the Frontier building, which is a co-working space downstairs. It's free. Right now during COVID, there's nobody really there, but they do allow people to actually sign up for time. So hopefully, some people might want to take advantage of that because they only have about one or two people showing up, per day, per week. So um, so the idea of, I do a lot of, as Mike mentioned, the sports stuff with Manchester United. I'm a big Arsenal fan, and all these uh, universities, they have mascots. So I chose to do a mascot logo. So RTP does stand for Research Triangle Photography, or Research Triangle Park Studio, um, but I decided to do the mascot logo and create this red toucan. The toucan is like one of my favorite birds. It's actually got built-in air conditioning. That's one reason why it's so large. It can actually pump blood through its beak on hot days and cool itself off. So I just think it's creative. It's ingenuity. It's a lot of ingenuity. They're also family birds, so they nest and pair for life, for mate for life, which I do a fair amount of weddings as well. So I really felt like it was a good a good avenue for me to run with. But it is RTP.Studio. I've had checks written to me for red toucan photo. And I am a doing business out. So I've registered everything, any name possible that somebody's called me. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the story of that. I really, I really wanted to create a space on, not only on the web that's a little bit more elaborate, but I also pull in a lot of freelancers. And, I don't think freelancers, mind branding me because they generally like me and like working with my team, you know. But I do think that the people when I'm working for another studio, I love to, if it's a cool name, if it's got a great, kind of company culture there, I really like to celebrate that and announce it. So when somebody's just saying my name over and over, I don't think they take as much, um, as much commitment to that. It's not the right word, but um, they can kind of say I'm a part of RTP.Studio. It's much easier than saying, um, you know, I'm with Kevin Seifert Photography today. It just sounds a little bit better. It sounds like they're more part of a team, and I really want to create that. So BNI has also taught me about creating communities, communities within communities, communities. So I'm a big proponent and advocate of education. So especially in photography. So I ran a photography group with another BNI photographer. He's not. I don't think he's in BNI anymore. David Williams and I. And the interesting thing about that, going back to the logo, is right when I was rebranding, David rebranded his company to RTP Photo and Video. So so when people are looking for us on the web, the location is very key. Those companies were, I did mention I do a fair amount of weddings, but when I say a fair amount of weddings, that's way under 20% of my business. So the large majority of my business is corporate work, pharmaceutical, higher education, um, medical, photography, and anything STEM. Um, I I work with a lot of companies that are somehow STEM related, whether it's engineering, um, as I mentioned, pharmaceutical companies, anything healthcare is, STEM as well. Um, love civil engineering. These construction companies are wonderful referrals, and they're people actually outside doing things, which is nice for me to take pictures of. So
Yeah.
um,
And when we think of photographers, we just think of a picture like, well, we have to get together, families in town, take a picture. But to your point, let me get back to that in just a second. We're here with Kevin Seifert, RTP.Studio. Kevin's a member of RD27, both city business leaders. They meet Thursday mornings at 11:15 a.m. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. Folks, you need a good website. Kevin will attest to that, because if you can't be found, it doesn't matter how good your product is. So give the folks at Oak City Tech a call. Go to oakcitytech.com. They'll help you get your website up there so you can start to be found. Kevin, as a photographer, you are a brander and a storyteller with a camera, aren't you?
correct. Um, so I like to refer to what we do as creating visual legacies.
Mhm.
So in this business of photography, it's not just about the that image that you create. We are artists. The idea is that you can put this on your wall. I've been to a lot of events, but the reality is it's an experience. I mean, that's what our economy is. I'm mainly in the events industry, so we're creating experiences. If that's a family portrait, that's not going to happen without the photographer, right? So that's something that we create, and we try to make it memorable in itself, and then they see the pictures to make it even more memorable. A lot of events are just documenting that, so we're just kind of a fly on the wall. But we also like to think that we are adding value to it because we're making it easier and there's less stress on the person that's planning it, doing all the logistics. So if there's an event planner or a corporate production company putting the event together, they don't have to really worry about the photography. They know it's going to be there, and we can pull in video people as well on our team that know what they're doing. And we have probably about 20 offerings within any type of event, from conventions to summits to roundtable discussions to workshops. I do a lot of keynote speakers, um, association meetings, those types of things where there's 100 to up to 1,000 people. Some of these conferences are even bigger than that. And I do work for other teams as well, so people do hire, uh, pull in RTP.Studio to actually do some of the services for them, as either a video company or another. I don't want to say competing studio, but it's more of a collaboration studio. We have the competition. We have co-opetition, which are people that refer each other but don't hire each other. And then we have collaboration, which is where I sit. Well, like I mentioned, David Williams before. I work for another studio, XM Photo, up in Burlington. Rooster Media is Chris Hildreth's shop out of he's out of Durham. Former director of photography at Duke. So all of us collaborate together and pull each other and help our clients by doing that. And that's something I really took heart, from BNI. It's BNI does the same thing. They really try to, you try to build your team within BNI. You try to get that event planner in your group. We have Tiffany Englert in there from the Details events. We try to get videographers in there. So we have Christy Lowe Productions, who's an Emmy Award winning
She's
TV
been on the
producer.
show before. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
And
so you
yeah,
build it.
and I want to jump in here on that. You and I have known each other for a couple of years through BNI, and there's one thing that I always remember from you, that you're one of the first people I met with in BNI. And this is just in business in general, that you welcomed the relationships with competitors for a couple of reasons. One is you may need bodies at a big event. And the second one is you can't shoot every event in the triangle. And I still run across very few people that want to meet their competitors just to say, hey, can't do this. Are you up for a swap or something like that?
Yeah. So there's a couple key components to that. So the first one is I need to meet people that are vetted and they're good. So, that it's easy for me to ask for, I can actually look up photographers that I don't know. So that's one thing. Second thing is I want to I want to build photography and what I do up to a different level. We want to make the credibility of the research triangle or the triangle area a hotbed for great photography. So by getting those people that are really good and vetted, we kind of block out the competition. We try to keep people that are kind of undermining the market, I would say, doing that. Or we try to bring those people in and educate them. And that's the best position for me to be in, is if I can find somebody that's, a young, talented photographer, and, help guide them and they have a successful business, then they're probably not going to be competing for my clients. Um, they're serve their clients better as well. And then when I get an inquiry for that type of client that I'm not really going to serve, I can then refer them to somebody that I know, like, and trust. And I think that's really about it. So I do ask for photographers to people to visit. And I would say, I would say they're my referral partners. 50% of my referrals overall, not within BNI, but just overall, come from photographers and videographers. So,
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
and that's just something good to know in business in general, that not every business in the same industry does exactly the same service or product. So that's always stuck in my mind with you since the day we talked about that. And that was probably going on probably 5 or 6 years ago, but I've always been impressed by that. And I rarely hear that from everybody else. So I know that's helped you build your business. I want to go back to You had mentioned earlier you were a photographer and a reporter at the Durham Herald Sun. What was your first photography assignment when you joined the Herald Sun?
Sure. So, in an ironic kind of twist of fate later in my life, the first thing I did was there was a check passing, one of these giant check passings. So we call those types of events journalisms. It's like it's not really journalism. It's just going out. But and it was somebody donated, I don't know, it was like $10,000 or something to one of the entities, the charitable entities within the Durham Academy um, ranks. So they are a very, very big community sponsor. Really well known private school in Durham, draws people from all over the triangle, but a lot of Duke and UNC, um, professors and doctors and uh, those types are, has send their there. So that was the first assignment, and it was awesome because I was actually there with another photographer who's one of my greatest mentors is a guy named Joe Weiss. Guy was amazing. He just so it was kind of funny to be with this photographer that was an incredible storyteller, and we're both there, a two-man show photographing this check passing. It just kind of makes you laugh. But they did have kind of wanted to do, get me ingrained. I mean, at the time it was what, 1998. Um, so I was 24. I had worked for a local newspaper in a small newspaper in Indiana for 2 years. So it wasn't like I didn't have the experience, didn't know what I was doing, but they really just wanted to kind of get me in that trend. And that was the first day. So that was another thing that I really enjoyed about that was, it's I'm doing a lot of business, you know, development for my own business and understanding kind of how everything works. But it was really interesting that they did that. They chose instead of just having some type of orientation, they were just kind of threw me out there, right? Like, they gave me a guide as well, which was kind of cool. But so and then that got me through the process, so I could actually go through the system of putting in what the daily routine would be. So that was my first assignment. God, I think the lady's name is Kathy McPherson. She was the communications director there, and eventually I ended up doing a little bit of freelance work for them. 4 or 5 photo shoots. One or two during the time I was still at the Herald, and then two or one or two probably since then. And an interesting thing about that is I actually met, over the years, I have a relationship with the photographer that was doing a lot of the work. So, I knew him, I trusted him, I like him. I didn't want to push into his turf, so to speak. And now I'm actually kind of working with him a little bit on another photographer's team. So this other photographer brought us both in. So it's kind of interesting how that kind of played out. So, the rule of, don't burn any bridges,
Yeah.
don't, really held fast. And it turns out one of the members of BNI is actually using the same photographer for their stuff. So I also didn't, I told him, hey, this guy's a great photographer. If you're happy with them, don't change. You don't have to use me. It's another big myth of BNI, right? So
Yep.
you already
Now,
have somebody that you're using and like and trust, and they do a
yep.
good job. You don't have to use the person in your BNI group, but it's nice if some this person did throw me some I have done some work for them, and they've been super happy and they give me testimonials. So the other people in the group don't know, that for the thing that he hires this person for, I'm not the photographer that does that. So
Now
it's kind of a nice little.
your world these days is all digital now. Was that first photo shoot a film shoot?
Yes, yes.
And how did you
So
get the picture back to the paper in the olden days, let's call them?
yeah. So I date back far enough to do some drum scanning, which is where you make a print and then you put it on this drum, and it basically is like a scanner that scans a picture in. So back in probably the last time I did that was at the college newspaper, and I was right at the cusp of that. So I only had to probably do that for 6 months or so. The most people are familiar with scanning their slides in or negatives, in nowadays. There's, people have had Nikon cool scans and stuff, but we did have that technology, fairly early on. I mean, there were, those machines were $10,000, $20,000. So we call it souping the film. So you roll the film, you process it. But the Herald Sun had these huge kind of photo processing machines like you'd have at a photomat, you know, and you basically just put your film in there. 12 minutes later, it comes out, dry. And then you scan it, you go through and you use a light box and you look at it with a loupe, kind of like, I feel like a jeweler sometimes, but you look at James, but most of the time what image you're looking for. So I could tell you, I shot 5 rolls of film at a basketball game. I could tell you without, doing the number that it's probably frame 23, 24, Tyler Hansbrough dunked it, and then, somebody made a great steal on the third roll of film. So, we had an organized system to do that. So it would take me probably, 15 minutes to get, select those negatives. We'd run 4 to 8 pictures for a basketball game, for a good basketball game, in there, scan it in, and then you have to do what's called toning it. So, the film and negatives are all, meant for daylight. So if you're in an audit, in a basketball arena, you're shooting daylight film and it's fluorescent lighting or sodium mercury lighting. So you have to go through and color correct it. That would probably be the most time consuming thing. And then you have to enter a caption too. So, and back then, we didn't have processing power. So, a 20 megabyte picture, back then, would take, just to do one move on processing would take a minute. So you're talking, by the time you scan it in to the time you're done on each photo, you may have spent 5 to 8 minutes on each photo just post processing. So it's not like boom, 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 boom. So you'd pick the best out first, get those done so that they could publish, and then you send the rest and hope they get in the paper because you're on deadline.
So you leave the basketball game back then at 7:30 tip. You leave there after the game, go back to the newspaper office and start doing this process?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's for the most part. So I've traveled a bunch to Final Fours and the basketball tournaments. I went to the NFC championship game against the Carolina Panthers, played the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia. And all of those places, the Associated Press, basically, it's an amazing operation, the Associated Press. They basically have runners, and you give your film to them while you're on the court. They run the film, they soup the film for you, and then you show up at halftime, and you scan your pictures in right then. So you can imagine how much equipment and things the Associated Press used to have to do. Now the Associated Press doesn't have to have 4 people, back there doing the souping. They can actually just have those people actually photographing because they're digital and they don't have to take our cards, our film anymore. So it's a huge, advantage, going digital. And that's why there's a lot of money and a lot of savings in it. First digital camera I had in my hand was a hybrid, Kodak and Nikon got together, and that camera was about $20,000. And Mike, back then we didn't have solid state drives, so if you bump that camera, the hard drive, I'll switch video. Sorry, the hard drive would essentially, the camera's hard drive would the card's hard drive, PCIM card, would actually, the card would be gone. You'd lose all your images. So you had to be really careful. And nowadays, you don't have to be. So it's very cool. It's very modernized. And that's another part of the whole story of collaboration is, I've always had, Associated Press, other photographers. I mean, we would go to tournaments in Greensboro, and we'd go to the Greensboro News and Record I think that's what it's called. Um, and we would soup our film there, and they would have us a little spot for us to actually do everything, um, and transmit from their offices. So we also transmitted by cell phone occasionally. So, but that's once digital started. So that first digital camera, that was 98, 90, or 90s. Let's see, I got to think of where I was. That was Lima, Ohio. So that would have been 1996. So,
If you were at one of the NFL playoff games yesterday as a photographer, how quick do you get a first quarter picture back to the newspaper for their website these days?
in these days, they're actually, um, so our camera, these cell phones, um, are pretty amazing. So my camera can actually talk to the cell phone and send pictures to it. So there can be an editor back at the desk, at the sports desk or the photo department, and I don't even have to touch the images anymore. So, I mean, we do live feeds, live slideshows, with with no color correction, just raw, just right out of the camera. And um, we try to avoid that in the sense of, we like to have a better, you know, finished product, because, during sports, you might have a wide angle camera and that action happens, just a little bit far enough from away from you that the person's really small. So you want to blow it up. So sometimes it's not the best, the best idea to send that just as it is. Um, and But there are also some regulations on that too, because um, they the places like the NFL and the NCAA Final Four, the broadcast TV broadcast has rights, so they consider anything that's virtually live broadcast. So they might have a 20-minute delay on those images. I don't know what the rules are now, but when we were doing it, we weren't allowed to post. Well, actually, at the end of my journalism career, 2005 to 2008, we were sending some stuff um, directly, during the event, as soon as we got it into the editor. Um, but yeah, it's incredibly fast turnaround.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
We are here with Kevin Seifert, owner of RTP.Studio. He's also a member of Triangle BNI chapter, RD27, as we call them, both city business leaders. They meet Thursday mornings at 11:15 via Zoom. So if you want to meet some good business leaders and productive folks in Durham on Thursday mornings, please go out there and check them out. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. Folks, social media. I mean, we've been watching for the last few weeks, last 4 years probably, what social media is like, and there's a lot of people on there. So you got to get found again, but you got to have a message. So the folks at Oak City Tech can help you with that. Go to oakcitytech.com, tell them what you're looking for. I know they'll be able to help you. All right, Kevin, where's the wildest place you've gone to shoot something for somebody else?
hmm, and I love other photographers' stories better than my own. But just just traveling, just the experiences, as I mentioned before, photographing, all these basketball teams. I've traveled to, 12 cities in the US. First year I was at the Herald Sun, I traveled to Seattle, and I was following UNC basketball. Never really thought, oh, Seattle. Um, followed UNC basketball. They lost the first game. First time they lost in the first round, like forever. It was like Ed Cota and that team. And I got
And
stuck in Seattle.
wait, that was your first trip with them, and that was the first time they lost?
Yeah, that was the first time they lost in the first round. So, and that was an amazing experience, because what happened was it was something like $1,500 to fly me back from Seattle. So the newspaper did the math, and it was like $100 a night in the hotel, right? So they just left me there for like 4 days in Seattle, because they expected to do all 4 days or whatever, and then fly me back on Monday, or fly. It would have been a Wednesday or something like that, Tuesday. So they just decided just to leave me up there. Well, it was amazing, because I was a huge fan of like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, grunge person, grunge people back then. And I got to travel and see all of Seattle as a tourist on the company dime. I mean, I still had to put some of my own money into it because, the stipend for journalism isn't that great, but it was pretty cool. And then I fly back to Durham, and they basically I come into the newsroom, and um, I'm unpacking my gear because I'm thinking, oh, this is, I'm done. Well, the photo editor comes to me and goes, start packing again. You're going to, I think it was New York. So what happened was the photo editor was supposed to go with the photographer to New York to follow Duke because Duke had made it to the next round to the regionals, and they were in New York. So they sent me to be the photo editor in New York, and then I got 4 days, 5 days in New York. And the photographer that was the lead photographer is this guy, Bernard Thomas, who I freaking love. He was amazing, great guy. He's awesome. You should follow him on Twitter. He's hilarious, but he's French. And so he's got great stories, and he knew everybody. Like he knew everybody from the other newspapers. So I got to really meet all these other people because we all traveled together. So all the state photographers, Charlotte Observer, News and Observer, News and Record, even the DTH, the Daily Tar Heel. Well, at this time it would have been Duke Chronicle, of course, because I'm with Duke now, but I'm following Duke. But we got to kind of tour the city, and then the AP people, they work nationally, so they're kind of zoned out, into different regions, and they follow teams. So there was this guy Bob Leverone, and he showed us around New York, and he was an amazing tour guide. He knew like all these great spots. We went to McSorley's, which is like I'd never even heard of McSorley's, and we're in there like with this guy, and the people in McSorley's knew Bob Leverone. I was like, this is insane. It was crazy, but that
And
was
that's
awesome.
the bar from How I Met Your Mother, right?
I don't know.
McSorley's. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. I've never watched that show,
Okay.
but yeah, it's they said Bob called it the center of the universe was what people call it there. Like Abraham Lincoln apparently drank at that bar. I mean, it's pretty wild. But in terms of photo um, coverage, just kind of, I don't, I'm not going out and doing nature photography where I'm photographing polar bears or, going in these things. I'm also not doing, international journalism work. So you see, I really admire those people, but the reality is when I started this, I thought, oh, I love National Geographic. I think that's kind of everybody's goal. And then I started, during school, I started seeing, oh my God, what these people live through. I mean, it's great experience, but man, it makes you appreciate what they do because I do not want to do that. I mean, you're seeing these people, they're going into war zones. They're, walking through, a jungle, and they're just covered in mud and mosquitoes. And it's like, man, I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to be around people. I wanted to be around events. Um, wanted to be at places where people were excited to be there, and it was good moments. And that's one thing that's really difficult about newspaper work is, you can't just pick and choose. Some people you do get assigned to be. One of the best things that happened to me in like 2000, 2001 or so, I actually was on the business beat for a little while, which is, something I'd never really experienced because I was at papers that really didn't have a great business, So I was in RTP, going back to that, and I just fell in love with it. And I love the idea of telling these stories of what's actually going on in these buildings. I mean, there's so many amazing people. So really, I really kind of really wanted to highlight, not just events, um, but people that were doing this amazing work, and you know, and I think that's what's kept me kind of in the game so long and so passionate about photography because it is you are able to connect people on an intimate level without ever actually being in physical with them being in contact with those people. So you think about leaders, like people feel like they know. you know Barack Obama is a great example. I have the the book, the Barack Obama book, um, by Pete Souza, and you look through that and you feel like you know him, and that's what my job is, to leave that visual legacy, for it. Um, so yeah, but I've
Or
definitely
some,
had
yeah.
had some great adventures. Yeah. So a lot
Or,
of the adventures are smaller stories, just meeting somebody, going in. But one of my favorite people that I ever met was Ann Atwater. She was the black lady in Durham that befriended the CP Ellis, who was a Klansman, and they became lifelong friends. And I got to meet Anne and listen to her story, and you know help tell that story to people. Um, and that is incredible. I was in this lady's house. I mean, humble existence, and but she's one of the most iconic people in Durham history. Um, and just get to meet all these people, and then I meet people that are I've been out, you know in the sticks, and somebody, I met this kid that was a bull rider. He was like, I don't know, 8 years old or something like that. And then like 20 years later, I his mom came up to me at an event and was like, "Hey, do you remember like, she recognized me, and she, remember this?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I love that." I actually had the picture on my phone. It was in my portfolio, um in a Dropbox at that time. And he calls this this handsome young adult over, and it was him. And I'm like, "Oh my god, that's him." So it's like, it's really, you're really part of a community, and you feel like part of the human world. And I just love that about this profession, and the people that really are passionate about it. I surround myself, going back to the inviting photographers. I have a great network of photojournalists, all over the country, if not the world, that I can rely on, pick up the phone, um, work with. I still get occasionally, once a year, twice a year, I get a call from somebody, you telling me that they're going to be down in this area. You know, am I available to work, that, or do I know somebody I can connect them with in Charlotte or somewhere? So it's incredible. It's such a bond. And now with everything that's happening in the world, there's so many of the photographers are kind of getting together, and just thinking about what the younger generation is doing right now in covering these. And some of it's not the younger generation. I mean, these are lifelong photographers that have been covering politics and war, and um, just all these different things going on. And you know, um, I hope to be able to take that same passion and approach and tell the everyday story. But we just can't we can't not think about those guys, those ladies and gentlemen that are out there, you know, in the thick of it. At times, just you know, um, really, it's a pretty amazing profession. Access is key. The camera does give you some access, but it's really about training and personality, and getting being trustworthy. I think is an incredible um, notion and powerful tool for journalism. Um, and you can see, if you look at these successful journalists and photographers, that's the number one thing I'd say, is they're just trustworthy. So if they've made it to that top, to that position, they're really, they have big hearts, and are helping.
if someone's trying to get into the industry today, what's one tip you would give them?
Good question. Um, I would say definitely work your butt off to try to find an apprenticeship, or a photographer that will be willing to at least take you under their wing. It's really hard these days because there are so many people trying to get into the business. But that's another thing about BNI. The people that I have done that with have been mostly referrals from BNI chapter members. Um, So just it's really important, because just, going out there with a camera in hand, and you're bound to make mistakes that are easy to avoid if you just have some mentorship. You just have somebody that you can call on and say, "Hey, I'm going to photograph my first engagement session," you know, so I can give them tips on just that. Just that type of shoot. What are some things that you want to avoid? There are certain, just like we were talking about product placement in this video beforehand, but um, there are some things that you could do when posing a couple that could be bad for that couple, and they won't know it. And if you don't know it, you could really get in some and some get those people in trouble. Today's social media is just crazy. And these young photographers and people that want to be in this profession, they have such a great skill set. I mean, I know very few college students that can't put a video together and edit, and I mean, it's incredible. It's an incredible skill set. That training for me, is something that they could give back. So, if I can get somebody on the team to do that, I'm gonna throw them a bone and say, we're gonna cover this. I'm gonna get you out on this, on this. You're gonna be photographing with me, and you have no pressure because you're gonna be the second shooter. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to create a kick-ass photo, you know, of this. And if it's not kick-ass, that's okay, right? And then the next time, I can go through and edit and say, all right, next time, here's how to improve this photo, right? Meanwhile, I might be getting some education from them. So, and I think that's, going back again to BNI, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be a consulting director for BNI, was because I really wanted to learn from other BNI members that were successful. So, but that's an excellent question. Um, the other part of that is, you know, just just I think that education is key. So pay for your education. You know, if you can get an apprentice that's paying it off, you're working, you're contributing, but don't be afraid to, pay a photographer for a workshop, right? Don't be afraid to go to a photography convention. Don't be afraid to go to a college that offers, photography. I mean, I took a 4-year program, but we have an amazing we have an amazing community college system in North Carolina. So many photographers here went to Randolph Community College, um, who are the armadillos, by the way, which is kind of funny that we were talking about the mascot logos earlier. Um, they offer a 2-year program, associate's degree in photography, and it's incredible. I mean, I know so many photographers, going back, Joe Weiss, I believe, went there, who I mentioned. Another guy on staff, Mark Dolish, at the Herald. He went to RCC. I believe that's where Bernard Thomas ended up going, before. So it's a really great pathway. And the key to it again is networking. So, you can try to go out and be a photographer. There's no barriers to it. I mean, it's pretty easy to, get a family photo port. There's not that much pressure, right? Like, what's the worst that can happen? You don't do something right, and they hire somebody else, and have to have a reshoot. They're mad at you, but it's not the end of the world. Um, but that network of people that I have from my experience at Ohio University is incredible. We had relationships with other universities. We would see each other, when we traveled, um, and we would meet people from other universities. So there's this there's this whole core of people, and a place like Randolph Community College or Durham Tech has some great programs. Wake Tech has some good programs, and now you have all these other entities too. You have all these other um, genres of photography and videography. You have drone piloting, so you might be able to pick up another skill set as well, for that. It's really just, I think education is really worth it. And um, you know, my mother-in-law, said that most people would say, "What's the most valuable thing you own?" And most people would say their car or their house, and she would say, "No, it's your education," right? So I think that's really important.
Yep, we agree with you on that. It's been a blast having you on the show. We would also like to wish you a happy early birthday.
Thank you.
I know coming up Wednesday, you're going to be around 41 again. We'll just leave it at that. I know folks can go to RTP.Studio. Check out your website, get in touch with you there. And of course, we've been putting your phone number up here on the show the whole time. We love the stories, your success. You built it the hard way, right? Just networked, and the ultimate goal is to get to referral only. And so congratulations for that, but we'd love to having you on the show.
Yeah, Mike, I really appreciate it, and we will see each other soon. I'm sure you'll
Yeah,
probably be teaching the next training if I get renewed in my BNI chapter.
sounds good. Well, good
We
luck with
still have to do the training. It's
I know,
crazy.
I
Like
know.
it's like that's how strict our chapter is, and
And
it's great.
it should be, yep. So anyways, good luck to 2021 for you, and we'll see everybody next time on Triangle BNI.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.